I've been playing guitar now for more than 13 years, but I've never once looked into proper guitar maintenance and care, but today I wanted to change that. We're going to go through the stages of a full service for both of my electric guitars, cleaning, oiling, and buffing them, as well as doing a general assessment of any aspects of them that might need to be professionally repaired or replaced. And as always, the specific sections of the video will all be in the timestamps below, but apart from that, let's just jump in. Now first up, I have my Fender American Original 60 Spec Telecaster. This is my newest guitar, bought roughly a year ago, but it's also my main guitar, so in that time it's seen a pretty considerable amount of use both at home and in studio and gigging situations. And my goal with this one was mostly just general cleaning and overall assessment. Next up, I have my Gibson Les Paul Studio, which is significantly older than my Tele, more than 10 years or so, and it's also never been cleaned aside from the occasional wipe down with a damp towel. Needless to say, it was in pretty rough shape, but my goal with it was to clean it up as best I could and note the various aspects of it that needed to be either repaired or replaced in order to restore it to its former glory. And for the cleaning, I was using this, the Dunlop 65 maintenance kit, which I picked up from a local music store as it seemed to include basically everything that I could possibly need. Multiple cleaning solutions, 2 microfiber cloths, a fret polishing cloth, the works. But to begin the process, I started by removing the strings to get into cleaning both the fingerboard and the frets. These are the places that require the most time and effort in the overall process, as they're the parts of your guitar that are most subject to the buildup of grime. For this, I was using the Fingerboard 01 cleaner and prep, and for the Telecaster it was pretty simple. There was some grime around the edges of the frets which came off quickly and easily with just a single pass of the microfiber cloth with the cleaner, and the frets were the same, quick and easy with very little resistance. The Les Paul, however, was a little more tricky. There was some intense buildup of grime around the edges of the frets which I couldn't remove with just the cloth, so I had to swap out to using steel wool with the cleaner instead. And this is okay, but if you do the same, remember to be as gentle as you can and use only the lightest grade of steel wool you can find in order to prevent causing any damage. But it worked nicely, and after a follow-up run with the microfiber cloth, it was looking pretty fresh. The frets were also intense with a fair amount of grime and tarnishing there. There was a lot of resistance to the polishing cloth, and while I did the best I could, it was clear that there was still more to do, so it may be something that I have to come back to more than once in a future run. Next, I moved on to oiling my fingerboards, and there's a note to this. Dark wood fingerboards require oiling to prevent dehydration and damage to the grain. Light wood fingerboards, however, don't need to be oiled, just wipe down with a cloth and some cleaner. And lacquered fingerboards can't be either oiled or cleaned, just wiped down with a damp cloth. And as both my fingerboards are made from rosewood, I'll be oiling them with the Fingerboard 02 Deep Conditioner. And for my Tele, you could see that it was starting to become dehydrated around the edges with some brighter spots and some cracks coming out in the grain. But one generous pass did the trick of restoring it to a deep natural hue and brought out a nice sheen to the frets as well. With the Les Paul though, the fingerboard was extremely dry and dehydrated. I ended up doing 2 passes with the oil, covering the length of the neck before letting it sink in and then wiping away the residue, and this seemed to work because it restored the grain to a nice deep natural hue. Now typically this is where you'd move on to waxing and polishing the body of the guitars. However, I didn't do any of this to my guitars due to the type of their finish. Both are finished in nitrocellulose, which is different from the traditional polyurethane. It's a lot thinner and more porous and much more easily damaged by substances such as guitar cleaners and polishers, so the best and really only way to clean them is with a damp cloth. And the same goes for guitars with matte and satin finishes as well. Next, coming to cleaning the hardware, I knew it was going to be a difficult job. I started by getting beneath the pick guards and the control pots to clean out any dust or residue in there before moving on to the more challenging parts. With the Tele, I knew I had to focus on 2 things. The first being the rust that was starting to appear on some of the screw tops. The second being some grime that was starting to appear on the tuning pegs. The Les Paul, as usual, had a few more things I knew I needed to focus on. The very heavy rusting coming up on all of the screw tops, the pickup selector getting the absolute worst of it, the intense levels of grime coming up on the tuning pegs, and very heavy levels of tarnishing on the chrome and the hardware. To take all of this on, I used a combination of the Formula 65 guitar polish and cleaner with a microfiber cloth, as well as a toothbrush with WD-40 for the more intensely affected areas. And in the end, across both guitars, there was some progress with the tuning pegs and the chrome hardware, but the rusting around the pickup selector on the Les Paul and the screw tops in general proved to be a little bit too stubborn. But lastly, we reached the restringing phase, and on both of my guitars, I use only one brand and gauge of strings, which are Elixir 11 to 49s. Of all the string sets that I've played played, especially in the impossibly humid climate that I live in. The elixirs are unbeatable. And after this, I finished my strings with the Ultra Glide 65 string cleaner and conditioner, just for an added layer of protection and a smoother playing experience. And then aside from a couple of final checks and wipe downs, that was basically it. So what's the verdict on each guitar at the end of this process? Well, the Telly, being the newer of the two, came out really well. The only thing to keep an eye on being the rust that's coming up on the screw tops. With the Les Paul, however, there's a lot of work yet to do. I'm fairly certain the screws and the pickup selector do need to be replaced in future, but the rest of the components, the chrome, the hardware, and the tuning pegs, I'm going to sit with for a while and see if I can't make some progress on cleaning them up a little bit more in future. One thing's for certain though, and that's that both guitars look and feel better than they have in ages, the Les Paul especially, and with all of that said and done, the only thing that's left to do is play them. So I'll play out for this video, guys, and stick around to see if you can hear a difference between how each guitar sounds now versus how they've sounded in previous videos. But otherwise, thanks for watching, guys. As always, I hope that there was something in this that was useful for you or something you were able to learn from. Do let me know if there was. And yeah, thanks for sticking around to the end, and I will see you guys in a bit.